All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Week's End.
Yes.
My name's Ryan Boyles, and as always, we have Mr. Graeme Noseworthy.
That's me.
Right.
I don't even know. What number show is this at this point? Is this like 35 or 50?
37, my friend. 37. We're coming up on the big 4-0.
Big 4-0. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, folks, we've got a lot to cover this week. Some pretty cool stuff has obviously been going on, not just on planet Earth, also planet Mars. And we've got a fun guest today who is as chill as they come, but also as brilliant as can be, and his name is Kevin Hoffman. He'll be joining us in a few minutes. I don't know the guy. I've never met him. I've heard he's interesting. So this is the first time he and I have ever talked. So
we're just taking walk-ons now. I think that's the plan, right?
It's true, partner. We're just throwing the doors open to anybody who says yes, and Kevin was dumb enough to do so. So Kevin is backstage. He'll join us in a few minutes. Ryan, let's start talking through some nerdy stuff.
All right. Well, I heard, first of all, there's these things. We always talk about digital. It sounds like you've got something analog. You've got a new book to talk about.
I do have a new book. And so I am lucky enough to follow a guy named Travis Preble. Travis is not only a wonderful human being, an incredible tabletop gamer, but he's also a truly heroic father. And I'm a big fan of Travis. Travis recently hooked me up with this copy of the 2001 file, which, by the way, not only did he hook me up with this, but it's autographed.
Nice.
I love 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's an incredible movie. It's one of those movies, every time I watch it, I see something I've never seen before. And to me, people say it's the greatest science fiction. I don't know if I'd go there, but it's definitely up there.
Well, it started. It started a new era for science fiction for sure.
It did
on a number of levels, right? Right around the same time as Star Wars entered our consciousness, there was this thing that looked real.
Look at that. That's so cool. So if you're a space fan or a fan of the movie 2001, or you're a science fiction fan, you might want to go ahead and try to pick up a copy of this. So the reason I brought that up is I wanted to say, Travis, thanks, buddy. I owe you one. Really appreciate that.
It's excellent. Well, all right. I'm going to put something up on the screen.
I'm going to figure out how to plug that book in and recharge it while you do that.
Do that.
Here. Is it USB-C? I don't know. I can't figure it out. So this Hardware Wars, folks, if you happen to see anything that Ryan and I ever tweet, we were using Hardware Wars as our promotional images this week. Now, if you don't know what Hardware Wars is, please do yourself a favor. Get your butt to YouTube and watch it. If you even remotely like Star Wars, you have got to see this. I don't know what this special edition is. I may have sent you the wrong link, but this is a classic from made on a budget of $8,000, I believe, in 1978. It is George Lucas's favorite Star Wars spoof. It is hilarious. I used to see it all the time. I used to play it when I was a kid at summer camp. It's really funny. If you like Star Wars, you've got to see this. And Ryan, I understand you've never seen it.
No, I've seen it. It's just been so many years that I was like, I don't know what it was. I had forgotten so many things about it, but it's for me, I'm just amazed. $8,000 budget, because it's so good. It's so good. A lot of ingenuity really here. I mean,
my
this
favorite,
is one of those things.
I love the iron.
I know you have a story of how you used to watch it in camp, I think, right? It was required viewing. Yeah. I remember that we watched it in school, so it was something that
really,
you know how they used to bring in the TV cart, right, with the VHS.
Of course.
So if we weren't watching the March Madness, in North Carolina, we would watch, basketball.
What are you people doing down there? You guys are so weird.
It was part of the curriculum. You had to watch, ACC basketball, but we also would have movie time with classics like this as well. So it was pretty fun.
Well, we also remember the most pivotal moment when the television was wheeled into the Gen X classroom was when Challenger exploded. Anyway, next.
That's true.
So folks, check out Hardware Wars. We'll share the link in the show notes.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, the next story that I think we have is, we talked about 2001. We've talked about Hardware Wars. Now we want to get, there's something in between the two that's a bit more, I think, attainable, more realistic. But you have an idea. You were pitching me on, I think I was watching this, but it sounds like we had, I want to remind everybody, last week's show, we had a special episode where we covered the landing of the Perseverance on Mars. And our guest for that show and a prior show was Max Campbell, our buddy who's an archivist. You have a brilliant
space historian.
Space historian. You have a brilliant business concept that I think could be a Kickstarter.
I do. So, folks, if you're listening to this and you're a millionaire or billionaire, of which I know we have dozens who listen, please send me your checks, because here's my idea. Actually, full disclosure, it wasn't my idea. So this Air and Space Museum the day before had put out a picture of Mariner 6, which is a space probe. And they said, this isn't a ceiling fan, it's actually a space probe. And I was like, oh my God,
but
I would love to. Yes, I would love to have, and I can't stop thinking about it, how cool it would be to design a series of ceiling fans that actually look like space probes. And Max said he'd already buy one. So if you're an investor, I already have one, count it, one willing customer. So that's amazing. I already have sales in the bag. How can you not want to invest in this idea?
Brilliant.
So I found this GIF. I don't know what it's from. I don't even know which one that is. I don't know. But the point is that think about it. Think about a ceiling fan that looks like a space probe. That'd be so cool. That would be so cool.
So cool.
I know,
all right. I think I would be in the market for
everything
that.
I say is brilliant.
My ceiling fan is pretty boring. I mean, I've changed out the lights to be like cool LED stuff, but yeah, that would definitely up the game.
Well, you got to up your game, bro. I mean, you know.
So let's get into. I think there's a lot of stories, a lot of stuff we wanted to like follow up on regarding Perseverance. What's happened since the landing? Because really, the excitement is now with seeing what the rover is going to do on the surface of the red planet. But do you think? I think we should bring on our guest to kind of kick off that discussion. What do you think?
Let's bring him on and let's talk about Mars and space stuff. Kick me. There we go.
There we go.
Welcome, Kevin Hoffman.
Hello there, complete total stranger that I've never met before.
I've never met you. This is remarkable. I've heard about you, of course. I mean, who in America hasn't? You are America's favorite technologist dad. I don't know what, but the fact is that I don't know you, and it's very exciting to meet you.
Well, I do need to comment though. Your standards are pretty low if you like me. So
they are. So full disclosure for the tens of viewers that we have, Kevin and I are childhood friends. We grew up together in Northampton, Massachusetts, went to school together out there through high school, and then went our separate ways and were reunited by the magic of social media. We game every Monday night, play Ghost Recon. For those of you who are gamers, our team is called Meal Team 6, and we are deadly.
To ourselves,
maybe not
mostly.
To ourselves.
Well, you've shown off. I've seen. We have shared on this show some of the art you guys that you guys capture in your shenanigans.
So anyway, that's about us. Ryan, let's talk about Mars, buddy. How do you want to get us started with your fancy?
Here's
Mars
where I wanted to start. This is something that you and I were both, I think, most jazzed about, and I want to hear what you think of this too, Kevin. But there was one of the differences between the rovers. There's been 4 other rovers. There's been many other missions that have come to Mars. But one of the key differences that I'm geeking out about myself is the progression of all of the electronics, the devices, everything that they have put on Perseverance is kind of upping the game. And whether that's all of the cameras, we talked about the cameras on last week's show, but I read that there's 26 cameras, because when you include all of the cameras that help navigate the rover, to what are on the arm, to different types of sensors they have, there's quite a lot going on. But then there's also microphones, and they gave us the opportunity to hear everything from the descent into the atmosphere to the landing, to what it sounds like just on the landscape, which is just mind-blowing to me.
I was thoroughly floored by this. So the 2 recordings here where you can actually hear the rover's self noise was just wild to hear, and the sounds of the wind and everything. I mean, just the whole thing to me. Now, I don't know. I mean, when you hear the recordings, I suppose they're a little underwhelming, but when you realize what they are, they're amazing. Kevin, you watched the landing. What were some of the notable things? Now, folks, I want to be clear on Kevin's qualifications here. Kevin is one of the leading space theorists in the United States. He's been to space 10 times. He has all of the code ever written to support any mission in space ever was completely written by Kevin. That's all lies, so we'll get to Kevin's actual qualifications later. But Kevin, what did you like about the Mars Perseverance landing?
Well, first, let me just clarify my qualifications. I can point to space on a map.
Nice.
So just
Like,
want to get that out there. That's pretty much where my space experience ends. But no, some of the coolest stuff that I saw on the landing, the two things that I thought were the coolest were the terrain relative navigation and the fact that there's a drone helicopter inside Perseverance.
Now, Kevin, you're a fan of drones, and you have been for a long time. You've done a lot of work around that. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and why the drone fascinates you?
Well, I mean, I'm not really sure why drones fascinate me. Technology fascinates me. So, but I was in a startup where we were making drones and writing the software for search and rescue drones and consumer photography stuff.
Wow.
And so I've been fascinated for a long time about the code that makes those things run. And there's this set of software that runs on drones and quadcopters and things called an autopilot. It doesn't actually do what a real autopilot does, but it takes your intent, like, should you hover here, or should you go to this GPS location, or follow this target, and it translates that into how fast should this motor spin, and how fast should this motor spin, and what direction, and things like that. And one of the things that just completely blew my mind is that there's an autopilot on the Mars helicopter that works in 1% atmosphere.
Now, you said you understand space because you can point to it. My understanding of autopilots is Otto from the movie Airplane. So that's where that stops.
Well, that's actually what I was referring to. So when you see the drones, you'll see this little inflatable pilot in a seat sitting on top of the quadcopter. And the code is really just a matter of inflating him properly.
So, Kevin, you are a lifelong developer, programmer, coder. You've worked across, many, many languages. You've written, 22 books? And by the way, folks, this part I'm actually serious about. Is it 21, 20, something like that, right, Kevin?
Something like that. If you include the stuff that I've co-written. Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible. And Kevin, you recently published an article that had some thoughts about how code relates to Mars Perseverance. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the blog post that I wrote was talking about some of the code that NASA has that's open source that they use to program that drone, the helicopter that we're talking about. And the thing that I was talking about in the article was just how difficult it is to write code that works on hardware. When we build websites and banking apps and mobile apps and things like that, those are all. It's not easy, but you can poke it and prod it, and it'll in general work similarly. From one device to the next. But when you're writing software that controls custom-built hardware, it's extremely difficult to make sure that stuff works.
I believe the term you used is rage-inducing.
Yeah.
So why is it so different between? my coding experience was
You can point to
coding
code
on my
on a map.
Atari 800 XL in
Yeah.
19.
Right.
I mean, so God knows what. So what is help me understand, why is it so different between hardware and, like you said, with apps or banking apps or whatever? Why is it so rage inducing?
Well, I think probably the most difficult is testing, right? So if I want to test some app that I'm running in the cloud, I can just feed it some test data and I'll get some results from it, and I can then, certify that I get the results that I expected. But when you're building something like a helicopter that's supposed to fly in 1% atmosphere, how do you test that? They tested it in a special chamber that actually does build a 1% atmosphere environment. But if you were to every time you added a couple of lines of code, you were to then push it off into this chamber and then run it, not only would that be super, super expensive, but you'd probably blow up all of your prototypes.
Yeah.
And it's time consuming, really time consuming to do that, right?
Yeah. So
it's a really challenging problem, I think.
Yeah. So what you have to do is build simulators that let you test your code to make sure that it behaves as close to the way you think it should as possible. And then you then put your code over on the hardware. And the problem is making it so that the simulator and the hardware behave closely enough so that when your tests pass on the simulator, you can sort of hope that they're going to pass on the actual hardware. And so one of the things that NASA has that they open sourced is this C++ library that kind of abstracts the way you write code for flight-based systems so that your interactions with the hardware are testable and predictable.
And you've got to admit too that
I was working for NASA.
This is a whole nother world of complexity when it comes to just the interaction of these physical. It's the interaction of these physical objects in any kind of environment, whether it's an autonomous car here on the highway or versus a banking app where banking apps are taking some kind of data in one part of the world in a cloud, in a database, in a whatever, and it's trying to display it in an app and maybe do some math. So
well, there's
one of the.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah. So one of the other problems you have is, in addition to things like the different atmosphere and taking your code from your workstation to the hardware prototype that you're building, the other thing you have to deal with is the fact that you don't have direct access to the things that you're building. When I'm writing an app, I have access to the running app. I have a network connection that's relatively instant that I can use to access it. But when you've got the Perseverance rover on Mars, it takes 22 minutes to get an answer from it. Mm-hmm. And so what you have is everything that you do on that device needs to be able to work properly on its own without supervision for 22 minutes at a time.
And Kevin, my understanding is that you talked about pushing code to the drone, right? And a drone flies, and every line of code, I believe, weighs 2 ounces. So the more code you push to the drone, the heavier the drone gets. So that's really tricky because how do you mitigate? I mean, that's science. We know that's a thing. That's provable. How do you manage the weight of code?
Well, to clarify, I mean, the weight of code is relative to the force of gravity where the code is running.
Ah, right, of course.
So the code, fun fact is the code weighs less on Mars than it does here. So
incredible.
You can actually, yeah.
So that's why they were able to take such basic computers during the Apollo program, like the big, heavy computers that got the Saturn V into orbit, which was the IBM constructed instrument unit fell away, and the simpler, smaller computers that were actually had that lightweight code were on board. The other that makes sense to me now. Now I never understood that. Now I get that.
Yeah. So I mean, if you think about it, they essentially launched a mainframe from Earth, and by the time it got to the moon, it weighed as much as a laptop.
Incredible. So maybe you should think about writing a book called The Unbearable Lightness of Code, the Kevin Hoffman story. Kevin, tell me what we're looking at here.
A red and white circle.
Okay, very good.
I was going to say, speaking of lightness and
do you see any images that does it make you this is your Rorschach test here, or however you pronounce that word. So do you see anything in there? Does it make you no? Whose parachute is that, Kevin?
This is whoa.
That looks like one of our Ghost Recon parachutes, actually.
I got to tell you, it really does, especially when I'm wearing my outfit made entirely of red and white tartan.
Yeah.
But this is the parachute from the descent stage of Mars Perseverance. So this is they fired the mortars, and this thing comes flying out. But there's a secret code in here. Can you guys tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, this really fascinated me. So this article's in the New York Times. I've always been, I think we've touched on it on a previous show, but I've always been fascinated by what they call alternate reality games, where you find clues in a real environment and it becomes like a puzzle you have to decode. And that's exactly what happened here. The folks that were responsible for developing this new type of parachute, which they had never been, this was one of the biggest risks, I think, for landing the rover, was that they had to come up with a new parachute deployment system for this mission that had never been tested in, like you're saying, Kevin. They didn't have the real environment to test something like this in. So this was one of the biggest, stress-inducing moments for the crew. But what they did was, the way they constructed, my understanding of it, short version is, they constructed this parachute and they programmed in a pattern into each ring. There's the inner ring, the middle ring, the outer ring, and then the outermost ring. And they left it there for some, I guess, computer science folks to kind of noodle over. They teased it in one of the press conferences after the landing, and then some enterprising, I think it was a father and son duo, actually decoded it in less than 2 hours.
And what does it say?
It says "Dare Mighty Things," which is the mantra for the JPL lab.
It also has the GPS coordinates for the JPL lab on the outer
ring.
ring.
Yeah. That's it.
That's so funny, because the saying for my lab is "Eat mighty donuts." It's very close. That's really fast. Look at these shots, folks. If you haven't seen this stuff yet, can you let me know how big the rock is that you live under? Because I'm curious what it's like to be you. So if you have missed the videos of Perseverance landing on Mars, do yourself a favor and check it. This is what you're seeing. On top left, you're seeing the sky crane as it lowers Perseverance rover, which you see in the bottom left. And on the right, what you're seeing is on the ground, the dust that was pushed aside by the jets coming from the sky crane. This video was remarkable to watch. I know we watched it. We watched the landing live last week, Kevin or Ryan, but we didn't get to see this stuff until, what was it, a day or two later, I think.
Yeah.
Or no, it was like on Monday. And
well, they were showing an amazing, a 3D sort of a game engine model of what the landing was while it was going on. And my comment then was this is amazing to watch, but we're going to get to see the real thing, in high def with the sound. And that's what I was waiting for. And this is awesome.
Kevin, there's a piece of Perseverance that made me think of you, besides the fact that it must be so heavy with code, was the fact that it has a rover family sticker on it. It made me think, when you had the Pork Chop Express, your truck that had all the stickers on the back of it to represent your family, immediately made me think of that.
Now this
is interesting because this is a photograph of Perseverance on Mars. That's the Martian soil you're seeing below there. Anybody recognize what's below that orangish tape there?
This blows my mind. I don't know. I still don't know if I believe this is true. It's
true.
It's insane that this, because I think about like, I don't know, I've watched too much sci-fi, I guess, but
Yeah.
they've also shown like how some of the equipment, corrodes in the atmosphere or what have you. Like I don't understand how you could use this kind of equipment.
But think about it. We know that the microphone they're using to capture sound is off the shelf.
Yeah.
Those clearly are zip ties. You can see they're clipped, and they've confirmed they're zip ties. That looks below it just like a standard flexible hose, and the orange above it, presuming it's orange, but I'm sure the color changes from the Martian sky, is just like tape.
And
So
here's
it's
the wider shot here. Yeah.
You don't think about the fact that there's these everyday objects being used to deploy these astounding vehicles.
Yeah.
Kevin, what are your thoughts on zip ties?
Zip ties rank just below duct tape.
Very good, sir. Very good. Okay, so we're going to shift topics here. We're going to do a little personality test. Everybody has to say what they are. I assure you the results 100% will be used against you as part of your FBI profile that we construct. That's really the reason we do this show. I am personally a C. I always have gum. In fact, I can show you. I always have gum. I am an E. I will ask someone's name and immediately forget it. I'm telling you, Frank, Jimmy, I forget names instantly. And the last thing on here is I am an H. I always, always, always. I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything without checklists. I don't go to the store. I don't go hang out with take my kids on adventures or hikes. I don't go snowboarding. I don't go anywhere without a list. So I am a CEH. Kevin, what are your lesser known personality types?
So you'll find out one that actually isn't on this chart when I start explaining it. So I got let's see, I got B, E, F, and then I stopped at I because it used an apostrophe to indicate plurality, and I just lost my mind when I saw that.
That about breaks my brain. You're right.
So there's an M.
Great.
There's an M that's not on this chart that represents the list of people that can't stand apostrophes being used for plurality.
Grammar nerds.
Just brilliant.
I got it. Yeah.
Ryan, what are your lesser known personality types?
I think I'm a BGH. I don't know. Some of these, I might could add F in there, but I'm definitely a list person like you, and I make up stupid names for people. The other one that I would add, now that Kevin, you're adding something, I would add one that I know there's a technical name for this, but I'm one of those people that their brain. I read a study once that people that look at the front of cars and if they see a face, like I associate car models with faces, because
my understanding, Ryan, is that's the only study you've ever read.
It may be, but it stuck with me because I think it made me think that I was more creative and better than everybody or something. So yeah.
Well, but you are. We know that you're definitely better than everybody.
You sure that study wasn't on confirmation bias?
Wow.
I resemble that remark.
Okay, so oh my God, here we go. I got to stand up because this is my.
All right, hang on. I got to get ready with the special effects here. So
this is very troubling to me. So
what's
folks,
happening?
you may have heard about this, guys. Daft Punk, who is a musical group of sorts, have announced their retirement. I think they've been together for 26 or 28 years. They're retiring. Now, already on the surface, I'm mad about this. Because first of all, I like their music. It's great stuff. But here's what really frustrates me. I just heard that they are considering making a third Tron movie. How can we have a sequel to Legacy without Daft Punk? Now, I realize it doesn't have to be Daft Punk. They could just go by their regular names and produce the music. It's still possible. But to me, they were actually in the movie. They were in the bar, the end of, what was it? End of Line Club, I think it was called, that Castor or Zeus was working at, I mean, libations for everybody. But I just what? They couldn't retire after Tron 3? I don't know. Now this is disgusting. I can't handle it. Okay,
I have a theory. I think this is a publicity stunt. I think I don't think they're going anywhere. they have
Okay.
become producers. All of their recent music has been with other artists like The Weeknd, who everybody, famously was the person that performed at the Super Bowl that nobody knew. I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, they've been together for something like 28 years or something, and
Yeah.
their music catalog. I mean, the one quote that sticks out to me that I didn't even being a fan of theirs and electronic music, their first performance at one of the big festivals is literally referred to as the birth of EDM. Period. So they're not going anywhere.
So Kevin, do you have any Daft Punk thoughts? Please tell me you're with me on the Tron problem.
So I'm with you on the Tron problem. I think they will come out of retirement just in time for Tron 3.
Nice.
And
okay, I feel better.
I think the birth of the true birth of EDM was that scene from Revenge of the Nerds.
I wholeheartedly concur.
Nice.
The Tri-Lambs at the tournament, I definitely agree.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed we didn't have that video queued up.
That was a deep cut. We will get it for everybody in the show notes. That's awesome.
Clap your hands, everybody.
I had heard, so let's get into lightning round. This is lightning. Lightning round story number 1. I had heard a vicious rumor that there was going to be some kind of Revenge of the Nerds reboot. That you jogged my memory. Maybe it was going to be.
Hold on a second. Can we cover that for a second, because that movie has some intensely offensive stuff.
No, I know.
Should absolutely not be celebrated or repeated.
Well, and
which is the case with a lot of 80
movies. And I think that's the reason it would never work. Like, you can't redo a lot of these 80s things, like Police Academy or whatever. Like, you can't redo it, and you shouldn't redo it. Just let it be.
What's next on the lightning round?
Lightning round, next one up. I want to just give. I'm just happy, and I know this is just divisive, but I'm really happy to see the Snyder Cut come out in about 3 weeks' time. There was a great article about the real story. There's been lots of rumors. There was the internet campaign. There was all this stuff. But there was a really good story in Vanity Fair this week that everybody should read if you're into that, about the film coming out. And I feel like it's sending this franchise back in the right direction, hopefully, because they've just been ping-ponging around, and it's been a real mess at DC. So
I'm not super confident, but we'll see. I mean, dude, I'm going to watch it. I mean, I have HBO.
And I'm excited about. I mean, we've talked about
this
when DC had their big event this summer. Like, I'm excited about the new Suicide Squad reboot. I'm excited about all that.
Yes.
So next story, we don't have visual aids, but I wanted to bring it back to space for a minute, and mention that I had binged the Perseverance rover thing. Got me so excited that I went off and watched For All Mankind, which is a series on Apple Plus, and it's essentially an alternative history of the space program.
Good? Oh, that guy just drives me crazy. Is it good?
It's divisive, man. I came away from
season 2 is better than season 1.
Very depressed in that, because I binged the entire first season, and then episode 1 of season 2 has come out, and it's a deep character story, and it's frankly depressing. I don't know. It's really cool.
Capricorn 1.
It's really interesting, but all of the people involved, it's just, there are some notable people that you would recognize, like Gene Kranz,
Kinnaman or whatever his name is.
all of the real people that were in Apollo.
You mean the characters
are in the story, but they have a different history.
Shit, I gotta see that. Kevin, have you seen it?
It's weird.
Oh, okay, I'll check it out. That's a good lightning round.
So we are in the storyline. Just to tease you without giving anything away. We are at the end of season 1. We were at Apollo mission number 28, and then it jumps 20 years in season 2.
Okay,
so it's Kevin, it's reaching for the stars.
Well, I will check that out. Kevin, you were trying to jump in there.
Yeah, I was just saying that I've been trying to save all of my depressing streaming and binging until after COVID.
Right, I would agree, and I'm the kind of guy that, like, Battlestar Galactica, I've watched it 3 times, and I've told myself I can't watch it again until I'm emotionally available. So I get you. All right.
right,
And the last story I think we have to close it out is you wanted to talk about something on Amazon Prime, right? You have your
that's correct. Now, normally, folks, you remember I pitch a different Netflix show every week to the point that it seems like the show is sponsored by Netflix, which it's not, or that I'm compensated by Netflix, which I am not. But this week, I'm not going to do that. This week, I watched The Last Narc on Amazon Prime, which I believe is a year or two old. It came out around or after Narcos Mexico, which is amazing, came out, and it really tells the story of the kidnapping and assassination of DEA agent Kiki Camarena. Absolutely fantastic 4-part series. I was riveted by it, and here's the part that will really I want you to watch is in that miniseries or documentary series. I don't know any other way to put this. It was just going to sound strange, but they interview what to me is the most broken person I've ever seen. It is a person who experienced such intense trauma and is still reliving the trauma of what he experienced during that period. You know, decades later, he is still, you know, bristling with pain, and it was really, really moving. I highly recommend the series. So The Last
sounds
Narc
depressing as well.
on Amazon Prime. It's terribly depressing. So if you are not emotionally available like Ryan, don't watch it. And that's it. That's our show, folks. We're gonna end on broken people and emotionally unavailable Ryan.
Well, the last thing we wanted to provide here is Kevin's shout out for where you do your stuff, your code. So tell us about your project that you wanted to plug here at the end.
Yeah, so I mean, it really isn't all that useful unless you're writing software, but the goal behind it is to make it so that you get to write the code that you want to write, and you don't have to worry about where it runs or how it runs, or where it gets its data from or anything like that. So you write the code, you can deploy it to the cloud or to IoT devices or web browsers or anywhere else, and you don't have to rewrite your code. And it's kind of related to some of the problems that they're solving with that NASA open source project as well, where if you can write your code a certain way, then you can be sure that you can test it, and you're confident that it'll run anywhere you push it.
Yeah, and you can also find Kevin's article on his Medium, so kevinhoffman.medium.com, to see more about that sort of that exploration of the parallels between some of this kind of approach with what they're doing in actual space projects as well.
Absolutely. You can also follow Kevin at Kevin Hoffman on Twitter, which is a daily joy, I assure you. And if you are looking to borrow and never return any toys from the series Mask, I can also tell you that you can do that. I have personal experience in borrowing Kevin's toys and never returning them. It may have been a long time ago, but it doesn't change the fact that is a real thing that happened.
I'm fairly certain that you having done that is why I'm not emotionally available today.
That sounds about right. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Kevin, thanks for joining us and sharing your deep expertise in personally going to space many, many times. It's great to talk to a real coder not, and certainly we know that is science and accurate, and teaching us about the weight of code. I learned so much today. Ryan, nice to see you in the beard. Kevin, I'm sorry, you were going to comment there?
I was just going to say thanks for letting me in under the really low bar that you got here.
It's getting lower every time. That's why.
That's why we're actually getting shorter every time.
We are. Pretty soon we're going to be. It's going to be like doing a Zoom with my parents, where it's like
I'm going to be laying down with my feet up, and I'm going to have like a bottle. We'll have like a bowl of popcorn just sitting on my pandemic gut.
Yeah, or like that scene from Cloudy with Meatballs where the guy's in the vat of cheese and he's just like scraping it off his arm with the nachos. That'll be us.
I just want to complain. This is a personal note. To leave us, I gained 20 pounds since last March.
20 only? 20. Dude, I've put on more than that. I'm pushing.
So
I'm not going to.
My physician said that every single person that's come in for like normal they're getting back to normal visits and normal checkups for people. Every single person, at least 20 pounds.
Yep. Oh,
So
sure.
It's
And on
insane.
that, now I'm not emotionally available.
All right. Sorry. Well, if you want to get more motivation, I want to recommend Graham's new series of motivational exercise clips from his walks out in the nature. I was enjoying yours today where you were describing the correct method for the intake of double cheeseburgers when you exercise. So
Yep.
Yeah,
You want to eat
pacing
one
is
before and one
key.
after.
Pacing is key.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right,
you
everybody.
gotta-
Thanks for watching the show. Thank you to Kevin. Thank you to Graham. Thank you to myself. We will see you next Friday for more hilarity on Week's End.
Week's End.